Hi, hello everybody. Good morning. Abumgani and everybody Nabuchomi. Are we good? How's our sound? Are we well? Everybody mic'd, all the connections made. I know that a few chomis running due to traffic, running late. I see SABC's here, Newsroom Africa, Kaya, ENCA. Jacaranda is not, is absent. Yeah. Are we good with sound, ladies and gentlemen? Amanene namanene kazi. Everybody, SABC happy morning, 30. I just doing a sound check. Really good. Everybody good. Right, ne? Fresh up, ne? We'll be starting in exactly 3 minutes. We're going live. And don't forget, I saw the last time, when you move about, just make sure that you are not disturbing somebody's camera. Ladies and gentlemen, are we good with sound before we go live? We're good. On behalf of the Electoral Commission, welcome to the Election House, the epicenter of South Africa's electoral democracy. My name is Kate Papela. As we begin with today's briefing in terms of developments around 2026 municipal elections, I welcome you all. Besides the guests that are here, the media from South Africa, also officials from the Electoral Commission. We also have got viewers who are following us on social media platforms and across all other platforms in South Africa. All of you welcome. After the Chief Electoral Officer has briefed the nation, we'll take questions, and just to ensure that we understand everything that has been said. And I'll also request all the media houses introduce themselves as they do so. Joining me in today's quarterly media briefing, I'm joined by the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Simon Mabolo, known as Kolobeyabe Atladi. Next to him, I'm joined by Chief Electoral Officer, Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Shiburi. Also, next, further down at the table, I'm joined by Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Outreach, Dr. Victor Shale. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, a warm welcome to the Election House. Also joined along the corridor, I've got Ntate Mahlangu, the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Party Funding. Next to him is Memo Ahisi, the GM for Civic and Voter Education. It's going to definitely be an exciting morning. Ntate Mamabolo, as you bring the nation, let us take through your statement. Afterwards, we'll take Q&A.
Good morning, and thank you, Kate. The Our statement reads in the following manner. As South Africa's preparations for the general elections of municipal councils are advancing methodically and nearing key implementation milestones, we must first and foremost remind all South Africans eligible to vote to register where they ordinarily reside, and that once the election date has been announced, they must vote where they are registered. Importantly, the Electoral Commission hereby announces a voter registration weekend on 20 and 21st June 2026 to maximize registration opportunities closer to where voters reside. The intended outcome of the registration weekend is to facilitate access to franchise and broaden electoral participation. The timing of this registration weekend aligns with the current planning framework, namely that the Commission must stand ready to administer elections whenever such elections are lawfully called. This alignment ensures procedural certainty, operational readiness, and full compliance with the legal framework. Following the completion of the processes of voter registration, we anticipate the proclamation of the election date by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Once the election date is proclaimed, eligible voters will have until midnight on that same day to register to vote. The proclamation of the election date will formally trigger the performance of activities that underpin the election timetable. Some of the key features of the election timetable include the following: the certification and publication of the voters' roll, inspection of the roll and the lodging of objections, if any, consideration and adjudication of such objections by the Commission, submission of candidates' nominations and the applicable cut-off times for those processes. The Commission's position is that an early announcement of an election date is critical to allow South Africans to decide where they will be on voting day, as this determines directly where they are required to register. For instance, a student studying in one province but ordinarily resident in another must know whether they will be on campus or at home when the country votes. That clarity ensures they register correctly and avoids unnecessary administrative complications closer to election date. Crucially, in local government elections, there is no legal facility to vote outside of the voting station of registration. This is a necessary requirement as it ensures that voters vote in a ward election that has a relationship with their place of ordinary residence. In other words, voters vote for ward councillors to represent the communities in which they live. Several important election precursor milestones have commenced, and some have already been achieved. Chief among them is the ward delimitation process. In December 2025, the Municipal Demarcation Board finalized and handed over to the Commission a total of 4,305 wards. These wards represent 95% of all wards nationally. The wards that are yet to be finalized and handed over are in 4 municipalities in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. The affected municipalities, according to the Municipal Demarcation Board, are as follows: eThekwini Municipality, Mkambatini Municipality, Inkosi Langalibalele Municipality, and Alfred Duma Municipality. At the point of the December 2025 handover, there were 2 pending court matters between the Municipal Demarcation Board and some of the municipalities. The MDB now confirms that court proceedings have been concluded and the ward delimitation exercise has commenced in these 4 outstanding municipalities. Ward boundaries set the geography for political representation at the lowest level, whilst voting districts are electoral administrative units. Citizens register where they live, and these registrations are organized into the voters' roll segments per voting district. Once the Minister of COGTA determines the number of councillors for each municipality, the MDB uses the registered voters across voting districts to delimit wards and, when necessary, subdivide voting districts to maintain balanced voter population between wards. Ongoing voter registration, voter address updates, and outreach to voters affected by boundary changes ensure an accurate voters' roll, which is an essential requirement for logistical planning and for ensuring that only eligible voters cast ballots in the correct ward, thereby supporting free and fair elections. As matters stand, the latest ward adjustment resulted in the subdivision of 1,865 voting districts, representing 8% of the total number of voting districts nationally. Provinces with the highest proportion of voting districts subdivided by the new wards are KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, which together account for approximately 45%. There's a table that gives a provincial breakdown, which you look at your leisure. The combined effect of ward delimitation and population movement makes it necessary for the IEC to revise voting district boundaries and the voting station network ahead of each election. This revision often results in the disestablishment of some voting districts and the creation of new ones to ensure that these administrative entities remain accessible and aligned with updated ward boundaries and current population sizes. After internal updates to voter records, field workers will conduct door-to-door targeted communication and registration outreach to assist voters affected by these changes. Alongside targeted communication and registration campaign, the Commission encourages all voters to regularly check their registration details and, if necessary, to update their voter details using the online registration platform or at the voting station during the general registration weekend, which will happen in June on the 20th and the 21st. The Electoral Commission continues to observe a steady increase in the number of South Africans utilizing the online self-registration portal. More citizens are also taking advantage of outreach initiatives to register and update their details, which is reflective of a growing confidence in both our digital and in-person registration channels. The nationwide online voter registration campaign is also starting to bear fruit. Between November 2025 and March 2026, a total of 260,000 new registrations were recorded. Of this, 128,000 were voters. Of this, 128,000 voters registered through our voter management devices, whilst 132,000 registered via the online self-service portal. The steady increase in registration can also be attributed to the online registration campaign, which encouraged citizens to register, update, and verify their details remotely. This campaign ran throughout the month of February and demonstrated that all South Africans are heeding the call to register early and proactively participate in the electoral process. The current registration activity is a crucial reversal of the net loss on the voters' roll due to mortality. Ordinarily, voter registration numbers decline in the period between two elections. The gains in the numbers reflect the Commission's concerted effort to encourage voter registration and to increase registration opportunities. We have the provincial distribution of the 260,000 new registrations between November and the current point. The Electoral Commission nationwide voter education drive runs throughout the year, regardless of whether it is an election year or not. However, ahead of an election, civic and democracy education is scaled up. As at the end of February this year, 530 municipal outreach coordinators were appointed to further strengthen civic education at grassroots level in all municipalities. The reality is that some communities still prefer in-contact engagement for purposes of civic and democracy education. So municipal outreach coordinators serve as the Commission's frontline community interface, coordinating and facilitating voter education sessions, mobilizing communities to participate in electoral democracy. The Electoral Commission's nationwide voter education drive continues to gain momentum. As we reported in our media briefing last November, and since the commencement of the current financial year, we had reached more than 2.6 million people through over 18,000 community events held across all 9 provinces. Since that briefing in November, the Commission has expanded its footprint significantly, reaching an additional 830,000 people through 12,000 community engagements conducted between November and January this year. This brings the cumulative reach of the voter education program to over 3.4 million people nationally. This engagement remains strategically focused on encouraging and preparing first-time voters, promoting active participation and fostering responsible citizenship among young South Africans ahead of the forthcoming elections. The Commission has also scaled up its contact center to better assist persons requiring information on electoral processes, voter education, and related inquiries. From January this year to date, the contact center has delivered results across all customer touchpoints with significant growth in volumes matched by consistently high service standards. A total of 27,000 interactions were handled across all channels, reflecting a marked increase in voter engagement. This upward trend was driven by a 47% increase in voice interactions, 159 surge in live chat engagements, 49% rise in email correspondence, and 103% increase in Facebook and Instagram engagements. Now we turn to staff recruitment and training. The Commission has approved the recruitment and selection criteria which informs the currently unfolding recruitment of registration staff. These criteria were discussed in the National Party Liaison Committee meeting, and some of the key elements of the criteria are as follows. Applicants must be South African citizens, must also be registered voters. The registration supervisor must have at least 8 years professional, supervisory or administrative work experience. The registration officer must be technologically knowledgeable and experienced or have some IT background. This is necessary in the light of our use of the voter management device. In the last 5 years, must not have held political office or been a candidate in an election or have been politically active for a party such as campaigning in an election. In the last 5 years, must not have been elected to office in an organization that has party political affiliations or aims, and must not have been convicted of serious criminal offenses. Now, this selection and recruitment criteria also takes into account employment equity imperatives. 50% of all staff have to be women, and 2% have to be persons with disabilities, and about 10% has to be young people who are unemployed. Based on this criteria and in the interest of transparency and fairness, the Commission has advertised positions for registration staff to allow any qualifying person to apply for any position. As part of ensuring integrity in the appointed electoral staff, members of municipal political liaison committees will be presented with a list of designated presiding and deputy presiding officers so that they may evaluate same for compliance with the agreed recruitment and selection criteria. Members of municipal political liaison committees may object to the appointment of any designated individual officer who transgresses the criteria. So this is quite important that there's political oversight in the appointment of staff at the level of the municipal party liaison committees, who will be given the lists. They'll be given an opportunity to look at those lists and ensure that each person on the list fulfills or meets the agreed criteria. The Electoral Commission is also currently conducting an intensive training of trainers program at strengthening operational excellence at registration stations. Master trainers, in turn, capacitate registration staff across the country to operate effectively in high-pressure environments to manage queues efficiently and uphold the highest standards of professional conduct as well as electoral etiquette. Trainers are being prepared to cascade consistent, standardized messaging and operational protocols nationwide, ensuring uniformity in service delivery in all registration stations. Now we turn to the role of the media. The Electoral Commission acknowledges and appreciates the vital role played by the media in electoral democracy and in the dissemination of credible information. The free flow of credible information about political parties, candidates, voting station operations, and electoral regulations is a prerequisite for free and fair elections. The Electoral Commission, working in partnership with the South African National Editors Forum and various community media stakeholders, has embarked on a month-long nationwide training program for journalists ahead of the forthcoming election. The purpose of the program is to equip journalists with a comprehensive understanding of the legislative framework, electoral processes, and the regulatory environment, thereby strengthening the possibility for accurate, ethical, and informed reporting throughout the election period. We turn to the registration of political parties. Currently, the total number of registered political parties is 805. 20 new parties were registered in the period between October 2025 and February 2026. Of this, 299 are registered on a national level, while the balance of 209 are either registered on a provincial, district, or metropolitan level. Parties are advised to ensure that they update their correct details, in fact, to update their correct contact details. This is to ensure that the records of the Commission are current and thus able to facilitate communication where this may be necessary. The Electoral Commission has concluded a nationwide series of information workshops aimed at preparing all contestants, registered and unregistered political parties, as well as aspirant independent candidates. The purpose of this information workshop is to facilitate informed and meaningful participation in the upcoming local government elections. These workshops were conducted across all 9 provinces between 17th November and 10 December 2025. The topics covered were, amongst others, the road to the 2026-2027 local government elections, requirements for the registration of political parties, candidate nomination processes in respect of both independent candidates as well as political parties, seat calculation and political funding matters. The next iteration of information sessions is planned for May and June this year. Now we turn to by-elections. As stated earlier, the work of the Electoral Commission is continuous. In the quarter since we had our last media briefing, a total of 25 by-elections were conducted. These by-elections took place between November 2025 and February this year. And we have successfully delivered these by-elections, demonstrating our continued readiness and operational efficiency as we plan for the local government elections. In line with its mandate, the Commission continues to replace PR councillors, that is, proportional representation councillors, where vacancies have occurred. This is to ensure continued representation and legitimate functioning of municipal councils. To this end, 105 councillor replacements were effected since our last interaction. This brings a total replacement for the year to 302. 302 replacements since the beginning of the financial year. In general, the law requires that the by-election be held within 90 days of the occurrence of a vacancy. However, the law further recognizes that holding by-elections too close to the next nationwide local government election could confuse voters and candidates, particularly where ward boundaries and voting districts may have changed. For this reason, Section 25(6) of the Municipal Structures Act provides that the provincial MEC for local government may not call a by-election if the next election of municipal councils must take place within 9 months of that vacancy. This situation also arises when the MEC, acting in consultation with the national minister, decides that the by-election should stand over until the general elections of municipal councils. So using the latest possible election date, which is 30 January 2027, the cutoff date for calling a by-election is 30 April 2026. This cutoff relates to when a vacancy occurs, not when a by-election is held, meaning some of the by-election may still take place after 30 April 2026. The rule does not apply to PR councillors whose vacancies may still be filled during the mentioned period. The Multi-Party Democracy Fund is the next topic. The Commission continues to appeal to individuals and corporate South Africa to seriously consider and make contributions to the fund to support and enhance a vibrant multi-party democracy. For the second quarter in a row, the Multi-Party Democracy Fund has not received any contributions from individuals and corporations. This absence of contributions to the fund does not necessarily indicate a structural flaw in either the law or the fund, but rather a likely combination of factors such as donor preferences for direct donations, current economic circumstances, fiscal constraints, as well as electoral timing dynamics. The Electoral Commission welcomes the international recognition for advancing political funding transparency. The 2025 report by Transparency International, titled Digital Disclosure of Political Finance in Africa, Asia, the Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean, identified South Africa as the most advanced country in Africa in digital political finance disclosure. The report notes that out of 51 African countries assessed, South Africa is one of only 2 countries, along Morocco, that publish political finance information online. The report recognizes that South Africa's system is significantly more advanced. The report also places South Africa among a small group of countries globally where political finance data is accessible and downloadable, reflecting a high level of transparency. Fake news and fake registration sites. The growth of artificial intelligence has had the unintended consequence of causing the increase in the use of digital platforms for disinformation and fraudulent purposes. The Commission is aware of fake websites impersonating its domain. The sites are intended to lure unsuspecting members of the public to share their personal information. For example, the IC does not use the domain such as exemptme.github.io. Members of the public are advised not to click on links and urged not to share their personal information such as ID numbers, phone numbers, addresses on these websites. The only official online voter registration portal is register2vote.org.za or www.elections.org.za. We've also become aware of false recruitment notices circulating on social media and messaging platforms. We can confirm that these notices are fraudulent and do not originate from the Commission. Members of the public are advised that the Commission does not use shortened or rebranded links for official recruitment. All legitimate vacancies are published exclusively on the Commission's website, which is www.elections.org.za. But more importantly, the Commission does not request payment at any stage of its recruitment processes. For verified information, please visit the official website, which is www.elections.org.za, or contact the Commission through its communication channels. The IC's self-service online voter registration portal is available 24/7. If you are eligible to vote, take the first and most important step, which is to register and ensure your details are up to date on the voters' roll. We wish to thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, thank you so much, Ntate Mamabolo. I'm going to open the questions from the floor, questions of clarity. But as you do that, introduce yourself and the media house you represent so that the team from the IEC is able to assist you. Voter registration date is up and about. We are getting ready. Can I take the first 3 questions? I've got one hand this side. Any other hand? David, can you check from your side? Okay. And then that will be the second. Okay, so we've got 3 hands. We're going to call them in that order. I also have got questions online. Let's start this side.
Am I audible? Okay. Dumelang everybody, it's Natasha Piri here from SABC News. Ndadesai, in regards to the 20th and the 21st, the first voter registration weekend, I think the last time I spoke to you had outlined certain mechanisms that the Commission had actually implemented to ensure that everything goes smoothly in terms of voter registration. Can you ensure South Africans that the voter registration weekend of the 20th and the 21st will go smoothly? And then, in terms of the proclamation of the elections, I know that the minister has a final say. He'll announce when the elections are going to take place. But the last time we spoke to him in January, he had said, Shazi was even there, he had said that talks are at an advanced stage of announcing the elections. The only factors that seem to be a problem is the fact that around the November period, examinations, are a problem, and some people are in a festive season mood. So maybe from the Commission side, the talks, the consultations that the Commission has been having with the Minister of Cocta. And finally, you mentioned an important issue on fake news. Just yesterday, I saw a poster about foreign nationals standing as independent candidates. Yes, the IEC has rebutted that to say it's not true. But what harm does this actually cause, the IEC in its work? Thank you.
Can I take the second question?
Sorry. Muluko Mloto here from ENCA. I just want to start, perhaps I highlight this. I think I heard the CEO, as he was reading the statement, saying that the total number of parties registered with the IEC is 805, and on the statement it says 508. Perhaps he may want to clarify that, particularly for the purpose of those who are listening in. The second question relates to, when you say that the Commission's position is that an early announcement of an election date is critical to allow South Africans to decide where they want to register, in view of the fact that the Minister is yet to pronounce the date, where you are now as the Commission in terms of your readiness, and I would assume that there are certain things you may want to wait for the Minister to announce before you can get down with. Do you think that this is delaying you, this is holding you back in terms of you proceeding, in terms of your preparedness? There was a statement made by the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, I think in January, during their meeting in Boksburg. An allegation was that the IEC is harboring criminals who steal votes of other political parties. He gave an example as part of his claim that at his voting district in the township of Seshego in Polokwane, where he votes, the EFF got 600 votes and the ANC got 300 votes. His claim was that that tally was captured, certified at the voter district level. Everybody who was there, the party agents agreed that that was the result. However, the number that was captured at the results operations center, the numbers had been swapped. And he says, and that issue was raised with the IEC, an acknowledgement was made that it was an error and it was corrected. I just want to understand whether you as the IEC are aware of this claim which Mr. Malema has made publicly. Last two questions. There have been calls to synchronize the elections. People saying South Africa is on a never-ending electoral mode. Is that a matter that was ever discussed? But also, I remember, can't remember whether it was the EFF or what, another party also saying, do away with this by-elections, because this ward would have been won by party A, B, and if somebody resigns or they die or for whatever reason they vacate the position, just allow them to fill in that position, because you have people who would really kill other councillors hoping that they will be candidates next. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you so much. May I take the last one?
Afshin, Mandisa Nyati here from the Mail and Guardian. So I have three questions regarding the voter education campaigns. So, despite these education campaigns, the voter apathy seems to increase every year. What is it that the IEC is going to do differently this year that it has not done during the last election? The second one is, following the national elections in 2024, we saw parties like your MK going to challenge the election results. What steps has the IEC taken to strengthen public confidence in the credibility and transparency of election results? And the last one is, with more than 500 parties registered, is the IEC concerned that there's going to be another adjustment of the ballot paper? Are we expecting another change in that? Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to allow the team from the IEC to respond to those questions. CEO, when you're ready.
Deal with some, and Tati Shiburu will deal with the balance. Can we assure South Africans that the registration process will go smoothly? It is the commitment of the Commission and all its officers to ensure that we give South Africans a registration process free of hassles. Our endeavor is for people to come to the registration station, check their details or register, and in no time leave the station so that South Africans can continue with their normal business. So we are absolutely committed to a incident-free registration process. And furthermore, we are absolutely committed to a smooth and efficient operation of voting stations when the election date is eventually proclaimed. Indeed, we confirm that discussions with the Minister of COGTA are at an advanced stage. He's been in contact with the Commission throughout the process, and it is our hope that in the not too distant future, a date will be announced so that every stakeholder, political parties, independent candidates, voters in their different circumstances, those who are in universities, colleges, TVET colleges, they can know where to register and so on. So it is really our hope that the date will be known soon. The issue around foreign nationals, the IEC verifies citizenship with the Department of Home Affairs. So when you register as a voter, before you are placed on the voter's roll, there's a verification process that is undertaken. And in terms of that verification, we check whether, firstly, you are a South African citizen, and if so, whether you are eligible in terms of age to be placed on the verified segment of the voters' roll. So everybody who's on the voters' roll, 27 million at the moment, we've been able to verify their citizenship status with the authority that is responsible for the citizenship of the country, which is the Department of Home Affairs. Then I'll deal with the one issue and yield to Ndate Shiburu. Ndate Moloto, pardon me, is actually 508 and not 805. You know, when your maths is not good, it lives with you forever.
Thank you, CEO.
Just to underscore the CEO's response, the assurance that we give is not just blind faith. It is assurance informed by the following. One, in our last interaction, we indicated the steps that we are making to ensure that the challenges that we experienced previously do not recur. What do we mean? One, we have re-looked at the coding on our voter management device so that the voters roll app on that device works optimally. Two, we're subjecting all the apps having been recoded to external validation to test for load bearing, and also thirdly and more importantly, we're optimizing the VMDs to work in all different social settings. In other words, to work in online where you have a strong bandwidth connection, but to also work in an offline mode so that it transmits data only when it has established a strong signal. Secondly, let's deal broadly with the result announcement and result collation processes. To the extent that a party is able to contradict the result that is on the result system, it's not by accident, it is by design. That is how the that is how the result system is designed. First, we count in the presence of parties at a voting station. We complete a result slip at a voting station. Party representatives or agents may affix their signatures to indicate that the result is correct. They can even make photographic images or take pictures of the result slip, precisely so that they can compare the result that ultimately ends up in the result system to the result that would have left the voting station. Once that result gets to our local capturing sites, a number of things are done to confirm its authenticity. One, whether it is on the official result slip of the commission, and to show that the result slip will be color-coded to match the ballot. It will have a unique barcode to it. It will have pre-populated name of voting station as well as the number of persons registered there. So the telltales are important, because if a result slip, on the result slip, you have more votes than the number of registered people, already is a clear sign that that result cannot be correct. We scan that result to create an image so that parties and ourselves can call that result up and compare it with the result that has left the station. Secondly, at significant cost, we employ independent auditors who audit each result slip, not on a sample basis, but on sampling each result slip for each voting station, to compare that the result slip that we've received from the station is the one that has been captured on the system. Lastly, there are automated checks on the result system, where once the result for that voting district are captured, our result system runs a number of parameter checks to say, is the turnout here higher than the registered population? And the system will block the result. Two, if a party X got 300 votes on one ballot and 1,000 votes on the other, the system also flagged that result to indicate that voter behavior is out of sync in that station. So to the extent that interested parties and persons are able to contradict or pick up mistakes, it is not because they had to do anything additional. It is the information that the Commission provides to make sure that the results that are published are ultimately the correct result. Lastly, there is a period within which parties may raise objections with the Commission on the declared results, so that the Commission can deal with issues that are not proper. Harmonized elections, that is a policy issue that Parliament must decide, and if the law is changed, the Commission will implement harmonized elections. Similarly, the issue around by-election, the law currently provides as follows: that one, if a vacancy arises in a ward, the only way to fill that vacancy is through a by-election. Whereas for PR election, the party retains that seat for the term, for the 5-year term. You just replace by a name provided by the party. Unless the law is changed, we will continue to have by-elections to fill seats that are that arises, whether as a result of resignation or as a result of death of the incumbent candidate. Voter apathy and what the Commission is going to do to reverse that. One, we are careful not to ascribe apathy to turnout, because from the research that we've done over a period since about 1998, we know a number of things. One, particularly among young persons, they do not participate not because of apathy, because they harbor some misgivings about some of the things that are happening in the country. They increasingly tell us that they are not registered not because there are administrative barriers to their registration, but because of developments in the body politic. By all means, we remain invested in ensuring that we engage with young persons, we increase their representation on the voters' roll. However, that must be matched by the performance of democracy. In other words, what is the dividend of participation in a democratic system? Until there's congruence between those two, the rate of participation will unfortunately continue to be on the decline. I've dealt with the issue of trust in the results system. The number of parties and impact on ballots. Indeed, that is correct. Because if you register a party, you can't register it for any other reason but to contest for state power. We are a multi-party democracy. We do not take issue with the number of registered political parties. We do not take issue with the number of parties that ultimately contest. However, we are concerned with the length of the ballot and what it does to a voter. We know for a fact that certain voters find it difficult to identify their party of choice on a lengthy ballot or on a ballot set out in 2 columns. That may lead either to voters not making a mark at all or miscasting their ballot. Miscasting a ballot is that you intend to vote for Mama Bulo, you end up voting for somebody else, or making more marks than are required on that ballot, which renders that ballot a spoiled ballot. I've dealt with all the questions. Thanks, Kate.
Whilst you're here, I'm going to read a question for you from a Daily Maverick from Victoria. Does the IEC currently have sufficient resources and funding to administer the elections to avoid problems seen in the past, such as operational and technical issues and staffing challenges? That's the first one from Victoria. And then there's one from independent media, Khalisile. The shift from a black box to a glass box implies that public and experts can see exactly how the technology works. How can independent tech experts or political party agents access the results of the end-to-end testing performed on voter management devices? The second part of independent media question is, which strategies has the IEC identified to flag hyper-local deep fakes before they go viral on community WhatsApp groups or social media? I think those are the only questions coming through the online system. The last one from Arthur at Heart FM in Cape Town. Clarity on the voter registration. Is this first voter registration drive, or can we expect a second drive later this year? Thank you.
so far, the Treasury has always placed resources at our disposal to enable us to run elections. Can we do with more? Certainly the same way that health and education could do with more. So challenges can't be ascribed only to funding. I confirm we have funding to run a proper election. Staffing, we have indicated that the Commission has gone back to its long-standing recruitment criteria, not because it wants to exclude certain demographics, but to do the following. One, to ensure that a voting station is managed by a person with administrative acumen, a person who can withstand the rigors of managing an administration, a person who has managed people or processes. Because if you juniorize the management at the voting station, it shows in the quality of administration at that voting station. It shows also on the quality of the voters' roll. The majority of electoral staff will always be young and unemployed persons. The criteria applies only to the three key management roles at a voting station.
Thank you very much. The black box, the Commission's framework for the collation of results remains one of the most transparent you can find in any electoral administration, or at least we run one of the most transparent systems you can find. And these are the features that are in place to ensure that transparency. First of all, the result system, once it's coded and ready, it will be subjected to an external audit process so that there is independent confirmation of its functional characteristics, and that it does the same for all contestants. That audit outcome will be presented to political parties as will be to the nation, because confidence that the result system functions optimally and does what it ought to do must ultimately be directed to the broader South African population. So at an appropriate moment, once the audits are done, the report will be availed to the country. Secondly, the political parties will be given an opportunity to bring their own ICT audit experts to audit the system and find confidence through that process that the system does what it ought to be doing. So those opportunities will be availed to parties. Maseko has spoken to you about the process for the collation of results and the length to which we go to ensure the integrity of the results. I will not repeat that. Safe to say that we also run an API that transmits the raw results once audited to all political parties, not to political parties that have requested access to the API, as well as to some of the media houses who have requested same. That facility remains open, so that not only do political parties have access to the scanned image of the result, they also have the access to the raw results data as captured through an API interface. Now, as regards the voter management devices, the Deputy CEO indicated that those will also be subjected to an independent audit. And the outcomes of that will be shared with political parties and indeed with the country. So that early on, every stakeholder can be confident that we've done all we ought to ensure a hassle-free registration drive and a hassle-free election process. The hyper-deflex and related things, I think we do anticipate that the growth of generative AI will create a fertile ground for increased disinformation attempts. And we are building our own internal capacity for social media responses. But one of the key strategies is that give people who live on, or rather who communicate via social media, credible information upfront and limit the scope for disinformation. Two, have the ability for an expeditious response where disinformation instances happen. Have a partnership with, thirdly, have a partnership with social media platforms, because it is in their interest that their platforms are not used in a manner that negates the credibility of the electoral process. So those measures are being implemented. But importantly, we are also evaluating the possibility of a social media code of conduct. We're verifying its constitutionality and related things. So at an appropriate moment, we will be indicating whether such will be constitutionally permissible and what framework has to be to engage political parties, candidates, media, and everybody on an acceptable use of social media in the electoral process.
Thank you so much, CEO.
Just lastly.
The last question.
Yes. Whether there will be a second registration weekend. Today, we are only able to confirm the registration weekend for the 20th and 21st of June. We can't preclude the possibility of a second at this stage, but we have no confirmation at this stage.
Thank you so much, CEO. If there are any other questions, I'm going to wrap up. I'm taking the last round. Then we'll be wrapping up for the morning. I've got one hand here. There's another one. Okay, I've got a few hands. Okay, let's start this side. I'll come back this way. Okay, let's start here.
It's good day. My name is Heuwel and I'm with the SABC News. Idealistically, I know the discussions of the election dates are underway, but my question would be, what would be the ideal date for the IEC, such that in the discussions with the minister and other stakeholders, the IEC will argue their case and say, this is the best case scenario for us on this specific date to hold elections? Does the IEC have such an ideal date in their discussions? Thanks.
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Heuwel from the SABC. My question is on the formation of a new municipality in the Free State, as reported since December. I want to know the IEC's role in that whole process? Is it an easy or is it a difficult process? What's the role of the IEC taking the municipality from 257 to 258? Thank you.
My name is Yamtanda Kapa from News 24. My question is about the replacement of PR councillors. You mentioned that you are recorded 302 in the year. Is that number normal? Is it high? Are you also able to tell us what the cause is? Is it are councillors dying and are those natural deaths, or is it just parties replacing them? And also, do you have a figure for how many ward councillors you've replaced through by-elections? Thank you.
Veronica Mahwadi here from Newsroom Africa. I just have 2 questions. One being on the voter registration. My colleague earlier spoke about some of the comments that were made by the EFF, I think last month. And one of them was also about automatic registration for South Africans when they turn the age of 16 or get their IDs to be automatically registered. Is this something that the IEC would ever consider? Considering the fact that it takes an enormous amount of money to put together voter registration weekend and to get those resources on the ground to speak to young people at a mall to register. And speaking about money, the budget in regards to the rollout of the local government elections, we are, of course, as you've mentioned, seeing a lot of political parties, more ballots being printed out as well. Just talk to us a little bit about how the budget is looking in terms of readiness for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Moluku, again from ENC. I don't think my 2 questions were responded to. And I appreciate Mr. Shiburi for telling us about the process of tallying the votes at the voter district station. My question was direct. Did that incident which Mr. Malema alleged, did it really take place? Is it true what he's saying, that the numbers were swapped? And while we are at it, perhaps if you can just tell us about the actual number of people that you are employing. I might have missed it, but I did try to check on the statement. I don't know. Perhaps those that you will be recruiting specifically for this particular elections. Oh, sorry, I beg pardon. And also on the issue of whether the fact that the minister is yet to proclaim the date, is this holding you back one way or the other?
Thank you, Pito Molemane, Kaya News. Mine is all about safety. In the 2021 local government elections, the then Minister of Police, Becky Kele, announced that, if not mistaken, 300 high-risk areas were identified as hotspot in the 4 provinces, namely Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. Since the beginning of this year, we've been seeing an increase in the number of protests within communities due to municipalities, their own municipalities, political parties. And some protesters have been threatening the IEC and the upcoming local government elections. Well, we all know that the safety of elections is relying on police and likes. But as the IEC, are you concerned that these coming elections might be affected by further protests during the elections, the safety of the voters, which is very important? No one will want to go to a voting station when there's the area is volatile. The president has also announced the deployment of the SANDF to problematic areas. Are you willing or wishing to have the president to extend the deployment beyond the elections? Thank you.
It's Natasha Piri
Hey.
here.
You jumped me. Sorry, Natasha. Shannon Merrick's CBC Africa. I think there's someone after me that wants to ask as well, before Natasha. My question is, I'm not good in maths. I did woodwork, I failed woodwork in matric, so I understand numbers not too good. So I want the IEC to explain this to me. 27 million people are registered as voters. 10 million people on voting day, the last election, national elections, decided not to go for whatever reason. Isn't the IEC worried that out of 27 million, the IEC has not reached a 99% voter turnout on the day? Because that will be good, because those people are registered. They are not citizens. So those people registered, why did they not go to vote, and what is the IEC going to do to get them to the voting station? Because they wouldn't have registered if they never had intention to vote. Secondly, the issue my colleague is raising about safety, and I want to add this to this information, and I think that there's so many media here. It shows the IEC must congratulate the media. It shows the media want to get this message to the public. Now, 2 local elections ago in Alexander, EFF and IFP, they were protesting. I was there. A helicopter was shot down. Ballot boxes was found. We reported. Then the police, intelligence, everybody said, no, it's disinformation. 2 days later, almost 100 people appeared in court, arrested at that event. So we need to identify disinformation and people that's on the ground. Because sometimes I might know something, maybe intelligence don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. I might know it, then I report it as a media. Then you say it's disinformation. No, it's just we're on the ground, we have better access to the people, and that's it. Thank you.
Good morning. Good day, commissioners. Mine is just a short question. I know that Shiburi did touch on that, especially on the, I would say, for a lack of a better word, yes, voter apathy. You said that people, especially young people, are not interested really in participating, not because of the lack of work done by the IEC to sort of maybe make it fashionable or enticing for them to participate in the electoral process, but it is because of the democratic system in South Africa. As the IEC, have you ever engaged government or political parties for that matter, or politicians for that matter, to sort of maybe make the democratic system in South Africa more meaningful for young people to see it as maybe their civic duty to participate in the electoral process? And again, at some point, you mentioned that 4 municipalities in KZN, a chief electoral officer, haven't concluded their delimitation process. By any chance, do we have the time frame in terms of when are we likely going to see that concluded? That's my submission for now.
It's Natasha Piri here again. Just as a follow-up question, out of interest sake, Mr. Mamabolo, you spoke about foreign nationals. I just wanted to find out if we've had any naturalized citizens contest, for the elections, or as a candidate. Because I just saw something. Apparently in 2021, there was somebody from the Eastern Cape, Isbalin, who contested as a candidate, but we are not aware, or we're not so sure if this person is naturalized or not. Thank you.
All right, Jakisha Bangu from Lavolset. Mine is just a concern concerning the issue of communication. I've learned I've observed rather that there's a lot of information that is being disseminated to public in the season of elections, and in a country where, in relative terms, a lot of people are unable to read for meaning and understanding, issues of language become a concern when disseminating the information. I know that in the past, the IEC would translate certain pamphlets and that they would disseminate to communities for purposes of civic education predominantly. But I just wanted to know as to how far is the IEC, or what is the IEC doing in making it easy for the less erudite to can understand the information that they are communicating to the public. beyond English.
You take the last one before IEC responds.
Good day, it's Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM News. Just two questions regarding the election date, and I want to play devil's advocate with this question. The COGTA Minister, Heuwel is said to play a crucial role in the determination of an election date. At the end of the day, he does belong to a political party, the IFP, Nkatha Freedom Party. With him consulting and perhaps having a potential idea on the election date, does this not give his political party an unfair advantage just with regards to the planning purposes of the elections? And then just last questions, out of the 3 months, November, December, January, has the IEC flagged December as a potential high-risk month to host the elections? Of course, South Africans take their festive season very seriously. And there's also issues of holidays, back to school, and all those preparations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On that note, I'm going to allow the IEC team to respond before we wrap up. Thank you, CEO.
Okay, thank you for the questions. The first cluster of questions relates again to the election date. This election has to happen between November and the end of January. Now, that period is not an optimal period to have an election because of some of the reasons that you have articulated yourselves. Firstly, the holiday season in December, the exams in November, and January when people are coming back from holiday and so on. So the minister has to exercise his mind and find the less disruptive date within those difficulties that are outlined. We are constitutionally obliged to have this election in this period because the Concord has already indicated we have no possibility to move out the election date beyond the 90-day period. So the exercise that the minister and the commission in consultation is about is finding the less disruptive date, or rather a date that promotes the possibility for the greater participation of people within the constraints as outlined. Now, does the fact that the law gives the minister the authority to call a day, does it give him an advantage? The minister exercises this authority in a non-partisan, from a non-partisan perspective, as a minister, and not as a leader of a political party. So he is entrusted with a national responsibility. And that national responsibility involves exercising his mind, taking into account all relevant factors, the schooling calendar, weather patterns, views of the commission, and so on and so on and so on. So he's got to exercise his mind, taking into account all relevant factors, and not so much from a party political perspective. The issue about naturalized citizens. Our law, as it stands, does not distinguish the franchise rights of citizens on a basis of whether you are a born South African or a citizen by way of naturalization. Once you are naturalized, you have the benefits of citizenship like all other South African citizens. So once you are naturalized, you have a right to be on the voters' roll and you have a right to be a candidate until there's a legislative intervention that debars naturalized citizens. Then they have the possibility to participate as voters as well as candidates. The issue around safety. Safety remains a primary concern of the Commission because an election ought not to be an event where people lose life or limb. An election should be about the celebration of democracy, where we celebrate our nationhood, where we celebrate our citizenship, because an election is an opportunity to give practical expression to our constitutional rights that we have. So that's really the starting point when one looks at the issue of security. But two, there are constitutionally mandated institutions for the provision of security to all South Africans. In fact, all inhabitants. Chief among those is the South African Police Service. They have a constitutional duty to protect inhabitants in the country, to protect property, and so on and so on. The Net Joints has established a priority committee whose responsibility is to plan election security. They have started, meetings are happening. The IC is a co-chair of that priority committee. And the hotspots are reported in that forum, and the necessary security arrangements are made on the basis of the reports that are tabled in the priority committee. Will there be instances of disruption? I think it would be incorrect of me to say there'll be none. I don't know. There may be. And if those arise, it is the responsibility of the South African Police Service to protect the electoral process, to protect voters, to protect staff and material of the Commission. The automatic registration, it's a national policy question which requires legislative amendment. The EFF has made a proposal. It has to be piloted through Parliament for that national policy decision to be made. And the Commission will engage with those discussions once the necessary legislation is proposed in Parliament. In terms of budget, yes, as Mr. Shibur indicated, we have a fair budget to run the elections. If we exclude our administrative expenses, we're looking at a 2.6 billion budget to do the elections. So we really have been engaging hard with Treasury, and they've tried to meet us and enabled us to conduct a credible electoral process. Is there, maybe to go back to that issue, is the date holding us back? No, it's not holding us back, which is why we announced the registration weekend. We're not saying we can't do anything pending the announcement of the election date. The processes of the Commission, the electoral processes, are unfolding. What delimitation done by the 4 municipalities, we are revisiting all voting districts in conjunction with municipal party liaison committees. We are identifying suitable voting station in that process. We are training the trainers, and there'll be a training rollout ahead of the election. We are doing a platform upgrade to ensure that our ICT platform is renewed and it has the new technologies for purposes of security and related things. So we are not held back by the fact that the election date has not been announced. What we are raising, though, is that it would be preferable were the date to be announced early, so as to allow students to decide where to register and so on and so on, and to allow for all other electoral stakeholders, independent candidates, political parties to prepare themselves and so on. Now, the very specific question about the results in Seshego at a particular voting station, we don't have those facts here and now, but we are able to go check if in fact that was ever the case, and confirmation can be given at a later stage. The PR councillors. The 302, the reasons, 159 is resignations, 45 mortality, 98 expulsions in the party. Is it normal? It's not out of sync with previous trends. How many by-elections have we held? In the last since November, we did indicate in the statement that we had 25. We can give you the annualized figure hereafter.
There's just a few residual questions. Is the role of the Electoral Commission in respect of the new municipality in the Free State? The Commission has no role in the establishment of that municipality. However, we must put in institutional mechanisms to ensure that on voting day, we can administer elections in that new municipality to ensure that a municipal council is constituted for that new municipality. The last question relates to apathy among young voters and what is it that we are doing about the 10 million registered voters who did not participate in the elections in 2024. We will imminently release the outcomes of research that will indicate the predominant reasons why people intend to vote or why people do not intend to vote. And armed with that, we can then sharpen our strategies based on data so that our decision making is data driven and not just a thumb sucking. So imminently we will release that research and we will know what it is that drives South Africans to participate and what it is that militates against their participation. The last question related to information dissemination and pamphlets in other languages. The observation is correct. We do not adopt a one-size-fits-all communication approach. From research over a prolonged period, TV and radio still remain the preferred methods for South Africans to consume information about election. While there's an increase in people who use social media, the level of trust of the information that they consume on that platform is very low. But you'll also accept that TV and radio are also the most expensive mediums of communication. So we must find and derive a mix. One, there's increasing digital use of digital platform. There's increasing animation of material that we place in the public domain to deal precisely with the issues of literacy and language. However, where we still use pamphlets, those pamphlets are translated into the predominant languages in provinces. We're using increasingly community-based media because of its ability to localize issues, to localize language, to localize content, and we can then have a interactive, rather than just us speaking, we can have interactive session where lines are open and we get responses from members of the public, and that way we can share information and build new knowledge. I think we've covered.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, let me thank you for coming through to the election house. Weekend of the 20th, which is a Saturday, Sunday the 21st June 2026 is voter registration weekend. As we go back to our offices, we'll definitely ensure that you get the statement, to get all the information shared on this session. On that note, have a good afternoon.
Sorry, Ms. Kate. Sorry, Ms. Kate. Moloko again. Do you have the total number of people that you will be employing? I think that question was outstanding.
For the elections, on election day, there'll be about just over 200,000 people to be employed, and for the registration weekend, is 3 times 23,000 thereabout. Yeah, and we really want to thank you. You came in numbers, and thank you for that. And we really appreciate the role that you play to disseminate information. So congratulations to yourselves. But I think you forgot to congratulate us for what Transparency International is saying about our online declaration system for political finance. But on another occasion, you'll express it.
Yeah, we didn't hear that. Ciao, ciao, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.